Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction House, checking out some of the guns that they're selling in their December of 2015 premiere auction. Another pistol, we took a look at the Borchardt a couple days ago, and today I want to take a look at one version of the Luger that was developed from it. Now, everyone's aware of the Luger, the standard. It's the P08, Pistolen 08, 1908, when it was adopted by the German Army. And most people are also aware of the Langpistolen, which is the long barrel, the artillery Luger, so to speak. It's got a much longer barrel. It's got a little tangent sight on the barrel. Those are the two versions most people are aware of. But there is actually a third standard German military version of the Luger. And I think those are pretty cool because, well, they're a little bit less known. That's the Pistolen 04, 1904, adopted by the German Navy. Now, it's less well known because it was the Navy, and the Navy doesn't really need a whole lot of small arms, so they didn't order anywhere near as many as were ordered by the Army in various services. Now, the P04 Luger isn't different mechanically at all. It's the exact same Luger mechanism. It differs only in a few small details, the barrel length and the sights, basically. We'll take a look at those in a moment. However, I think it's interesting because of some of the history behind it. So, the Swiss were the primary, most influential military that tested the Borchardt automatic pistol in 1897. And they came up with some problems, which led to the pistol being redesigned as the Luger. And the Swiss retested it. The Swiss ended up adopting it in 1899, which was influential. The German Army then did a bunch of testing, and by 1903, the German Army had basically tested the Luger and said, yeah, this is a good pistol, it's great, we like it. However, if you think about it, remember the German Army had just adopted the Mauser 98 rifle in 1898. So this is only a couple years afterwards. The German Army is spending most of its money trying to re-equip its troops with Gewehr 98 rifles to replace their Gewehr 88 commission rifles, which kind of sucked. It was more important to them militarily to get modern rifles than modern pistols, because pistols aren't really considered that much of a significant military weapon. They're more of a convenience weapon and a symbol of status for officers. So they were kind of second priority. Well, the German Navy was administered totally independently of the Army. The Army, of course, reported to the War Ministry. The Navy did not. The equivalent of like the German Secretary of the Navy had a direct cabinet post, and he reported directly to the Emperor, the Kaiser. So the Navy operated separately. It had its own budget, had its own priorities. And let's consider for a moment what the Navy needs small arms for. Well, the German Navy didn't have a Marine force the way the British or the American navies did. For the Americans, for example, there was the U.S. Marine Corps, which were basically soldiers stationed on ships. And so if you had to send troops ashore for any reason, you'd take the Marines, and there they go. And they would then, they're basically infantry. Well, the Germans did it differently. The Germans kept a stock of small arms on board, and if they needed a landing party or an armed party for any purpose, they would simply make that up out of the sailors, the ranks of the actual shipboard sailors. Typically, a major German vessel could field about 1/3 of its crew as land infantry when it needed to. And especially prior to World War I, the reasons for this would have been things like raiding enemy shore outposts. You know, if there's a fueling station on some remote island that you want to take over, you'd send crewmen armed with small arms to do that. If you were, say, patrolling off German East Africa and you needed to quell some native uprising, you'd use the Marine troops for that. This is why they needed small arms. So they had rifles, they had hand grenades, they had pistols. Boarding ships. If you want to search a potentially suspicious ship you think may be running a blockade, well, you're going to send an armed boarding party. Same thing. All of these purposes. They'd take some of the crew, issue them small arms, and send them off to do whatever needed to be done. Now at this point, prior to the adoption of the Luger, the pistol that was used for this, and the pistol in these for German Marine use was typically for officers. The pistol they used was the 1879 Reichsrevolver, which is pretty much a horribly obsolete gun the day it was adopted. It is not a very good weapon. The Luger is a far superior combat weapon. And the Navy recognized this, that those revolvers weren't all that great. And they actually looked at the Army trials. They realized, well, okay, you know, the Army did a whole bunch of testing in 1903, and they said this Luger is a good pistol. So we don't really need to argue with them. The Swiss liked it. The Army liked it. Good. Done deal. We'll take them. And they ordered 8,000 Luger pistols. Now, it took a couple years. It was like 1906 before these guns actually got delivered. And ultimately, in total, the German Navy ordered 31,000 of these guns, 16,000 prior to World War I in 2 big batches. And then right when World War I kicked off, they kind of went, oh, you know, we may need some more guns from this war thing. So they ended up ordering another 23,000 that were delivered during the First World War, right up actually till 1918. So a total of 31,000 of them. That's a lot less than all the other versions of the Luger, which is kind of why these guns aren't as widely known. So why don't we take a closer look, and I'll show you some of the distinctive features to these so that you could recognize them yourself. All right, so here is our pattern of 1904 Luger. I should point out that this was not a specific Navy version of the gun. It was the 1904 version of the gun which the Navy happened to adopt. So there are also commercial and export versions that share these same naval features because they were also 1904 pattern guns. That said, the 2 things you will see, one is a 150 millimeter long or 6-inch barrel, longer than the standard 4-inch barrel, and then most distinctive is the rear sight. So these actually have an adjustable sight. You can see it's marked 100. That's not a serial number, that's a range indication. And we have a little button here. If I push that button in, I can pull this tangent sight back, reveal the number 200, and that actually raises the sight. So I have 2 positions. I have a 200-yard position and a 100-yard position. Now that's of use to the Navy because they are potentially going to be firing over longer distances than you might expect from the infantry on the water. The Navy was also interested in the fact that these were cut for shoulder stocks, as were virtually all Lugers, but the 1904 pattern guns actually came with flat wooden shoulder stocks. They're combined with the holster, and when you attach the shoulder stock, which unfortunately we don't have with this particular pistol, but with the shoulder stock you actually get a usable little semi-automatic pistol carbine, which is also fairly practical for a naval infantry type of application. So those features all put together really kind of endeared this pistol to the Navy. They were certainly more popular with troops than the old Reichsrevolvers. All right, now a few specific notes. This particular gun is from the last batch of pistols. It was delivered in 1917, so you'll see that date here on the side, under, by the way, a set of proof marks. You'll also see that date on the top of the chamber, right there, 1917. We have a DWM logo on the toggle, simply because this was made by DWM. And then you will also see that 1917 date on the front sight, right there. Now there were a number of different production series of these Navy P04 Lugers, and not all of them share these same features. Only the last batch were actually dated. The early ones that you find will not have any markings at all on top of the chamber. There was some debate as to whether they wanted the safety to be safe when it was up or safe when it was down. So you can find pistols in both configurations, and you'll also find some where they had the marking down here and then they ground it out and remarked it up here. Now, as always with Lugers, because of the collector interest in these that has been around for so long, the amount of detail that you can get into the minute variations is pretty extreme. So I am not even going to attempt to cover all variations and possible features of the different iterations of the Navy P04 Lugers. My goal is simply to bring you a basic overview of the 1904 Luger in case you weren't aware of them before. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this was something novel and new that you hadn't seen before and now are aware of. If you would like to purchase this specific one, take a look in the description text below. There's a link there that will take you to Rock Island's catalog page on this pistol. You can look at their pictures and their description, and you can place a bid online right now. Thanks for watching.